All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some pretty interesting stuff today.
Yeah, you sent over this article from Washington Technology, and
Yeah.
it looks like it was published February 18th, 2025, titled GSA Takes Steps to Remove DEI from Federal Contracts. So let's dive right in and see what's going on here. The General Services Administration, the GSA, taking steps to remove those DEI provisions from federal contracts. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. This sounds like kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a significant shift, and I think understanding the context is key here. This move is really linked to a Trump administration executive order titled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. So that's really kind of the foundation for what the GSA is doing here.
Okay, so when I hear that title, illegal discrimination, that really kind of jumps out at me, and I think there's a lot baked into that phrase. So can you kind of break it down for me? What exactly is being framed as discriminatory here? Well, the argument is that certain DEI initiatives, as they currently stand, could be considered discriminatory against certain groups. So, it's important to note this is a very hotly debated topic, with strong opinions on both sides.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of nuances at play here. So how is the GSA actually implementing these changes? The article mentioned these class deviations, which sounds very technical to me.
Yeah, it is a specific mechanism. A class deviation is essentially a way to temporarily modify the federal acquisition regulation, or the FIR as they call it. Think of the FIR as this comprehensive rulebook for all government contracts. So using a class deviation allows them to kind of bypass the usual lengthy rulemaking process, at least for now.
So it's kind of like a shortcut, but why go through the trouble
Yeah.
of a formal rulemaking process later if it's so time-consuming?
Well, it's a strategic move. While a class deviation is temporary, a formal rule change embedded into the FAR would be much more difficult for future administrations to just simply undo. So it solidifies that policy shift, and it signals this long-term commitment.
I see, yeah, so it's setting the stage for this lasting impact. And speaking of lasting impact, something that really caught my eye in this article is that alongside these DEI changes, they're also getting rid of those requirements for those paper straws, of all things. Is that a common thing to see kind of bundled into these deviations?
It's not exactly typical. It's more likely a reflection of a dual focus for this administration. On one hand, they're implementing these policy changes like we're talking about with these DEI revisions, but on the other hand, they're also aiming to streamline government operations, right? So maybe they see removing the paper straw requirement as this cost-saving measure or just a way to reduce bureaucratic red tape.
So it's a two-for-one deal, policy changes and streamlining, all in one package. It makes you wonder what other seemingly unrelated changes might be tucked in there. But for companies working with the government, or those hoping to break into that world, what's the takeaway? Should they be hitting the panic button?
I wouldn't say panic, but they should definitely be paying close attention. This has the potential to be a major shift. If DEI initiatives are no longer incentivized or required in those contracts, it could fundamentally change how businesses approach these issues. It also really throws a wrench into forecasting and planning, right? Because, there's likely to be pushback and legal challenges, which just adds another layer of complexity and uncertainty.
So a lot of unknowns still swirling around. This isn't just a one-and-done situation, is it?
Not at all, this is. We're looking at a potentially evolving landscape. Companies need to stay informed and be ready to adapt as things unfold. It's not just about compliance, but it's also about understanding the broader implications for their business strategies and relationships with the government. This situation really highlights a core tension, this push and pull between the government using its contracting power to promote certain social goals, while also aiming for efficiency and what the executive order calls merit-based opportunity.
Yeah, that tension is fascinating. And,
Yeah.
it definitely makes you think about the role of government contracting in shaping not just business practices, but also potentially societal values, right?
Exactly. And this case with DEI is such a prime example. It really forces us to ask, what factors should be considered when awarding these contracts? How do we define and measure things like merit and opportunity in this context?
Those are really good questions. And, I think we've kind of set the stage, the what and the why. But the big question is, what happens next? Where does this go from here?
It's a little bit like gazing into a crystal ball, isn't it? But we can sort of explore some potential scenarios here. Let's start with the optimist's view, right? Maybe this whole situation, maybe it leads to a more transparent and robust discussion about the role of government contracting and what factors should carry weight. Maybe it prompts a clearer definition of merit and really levels the playing field, ensuring that contracts are awarded. based on this, more objective and measurable set of criteria, which in the long run, that could benefit both businesses and the government.
Okay, yeah, I like that. A little bit of a silver lining, potentially. Now, what about the pessimist's view? Play devil's advocate for me for a second.
Yeah, the pessimist might argue that this opens the door to kind of a rollback of progress,
Mm.
potentially leading to increased discrimination. So if companies are no longer incentivized to really prioritize DEI, we might see this decline in representation and opportunities for marginalized groups, and that could have these broader societal implications.
Yeah, definitely a less rosy picture there. Okay, so you mentioned a crystal ball earlier. What's like a wild card scenario that we haven't even considered yet?
All right, here's where things get really interesting. What if this move actually sparks a movement within the private sector?
Right.
Imagine companies taking a stand and saying, we value DEI and we're sticking with it, regardless of what incentives the government may or may not provide. It could flip the script, position businesses as the leaders in driving social responsibility, setting this new standard for ethical conduct.
I love that. Businesses stepping up and saying, this is the right thing to do, and we're going to do it, whether we get a pat on the back or not.
Yeah, it would certainly send a strong message, demonstrate a commitment to values. That goes beyond, simply checking boxes or chasing government contracts.
And this is why I love these deep dives. We're not just skimming the surface. We're really kind of exploring the ripple effects. We talked a lot about the impact on businesses. But what about the impact on the government itself? How might these changes affect their ability to actually get things done?
That's a crucial question. Think about it. If the government can no longer consider DEI when awarding contracts, it might limit their pool of potential partners, right? Potentially reducing competition, which could then result in higher costs and even potentially impact the quality of services that are delivered.
Right, and wouldn't it also kind of impact their ability to connect with and understand the needs of diverse communities? I mean, the government is supposed to serve everybody, right?
Absolutely. It's about more than just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? It's about building trust and ensuring that, government programs and services are truly representative of the people that they're designed to serve.
Wow, this is really making me think. It feels like we're at this pivotal moment, like on the verge of this major shift in how we view this interplay between government, business, and social responsibility.
And this is just the beginning of the story. It's a very dynamic situation. There could be these unexpected twists and turns as this unfolds.
Whatever happens, I know you'll be here to help us make sense of it all.
Absolutely. We'll keep you informed and equip you with the insights you need to navigate this ever-changing landscape.
Okay, let's bring it back to you, our amazing listener. This deep dive has probably sparked some new ideas, and maybe even left you with more questions than answers.
What are your thoughts? What aspects of this issue really resonate with you the most? What are you still pondering? We'd love to know.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the specifics of this GSA move to the bigger picture of government contracting and even those societal values. It's obvious this has some serious consequences.
It does, yeah. We've looked at the potential ups and downs, the optimists, the pessimists, even threw in some wild card scenarios. So there's no easy answer, but getting a grasp on all these different viewpoints, it's really important for navigating this whole thing.
Absolutely. And, thinking about the potential for businesses to step up and lead on DEI, it made me think about something else. What if this forces us to rethink how we measure success in government contracts? Like, what if we shift away from those specific outcomes, like DEI representation, and just focus on, measurable performance?
That's a good question. It really gets to the heart of how we view success in government services. If we go all in on this performance-based model, we could definitely see more efficiency, maybe even save some money. But there's that risk we could miss those bigger societal impacts, right? Like fostering diversity and inclusion. It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. It makes you wonder, what does success really even mean in this situation? Is it just about getting things done on time and under budget? Or should we be looking at the impact on communities, the environment,
Yeah.
the overall well-being of society?
Big questions, for sure. And there's no single right answer. The best way to go about it probably involves both, right? Using those measurable performance metrics, but also really thinking about those bigger picture impacts, finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, finding that balance. And I think that's a good takeaway for our listeners. It's not just about chasing headlines or reacting to new rules. It's about taking a breath and having a real conversation about what we want from government contracting and how it can actually work for everyone.
Absolutely. It's a chance for all of us, the government, businesses, and just regular folks, to rethink what's important and work together to make sure that government contracting is actually a force for good, not just for efficiency, but for a fairer society, too.
I couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thanks to you for breaking down this complicated issue for us. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this episode gave you some things to think about, and maybe even sparked your curiosity. Keep those questions coming, and we'll keep bringing you the knowledge you need to stay informed and ahead of the curve. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.